Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, June 25th, 2026. Time for another show. Guess what? In the pre-show, I don't know what you would call it. Pre-show confab? Pre-show, I don't know what. Give me a good word for that one. And we got the music working, I believe. Although I don't exactly see Greg bopping to the tunes. I don't know. But this isn't usually what was happening either. But I do see him. The music is working. That means Greg knows when we're leaving for a break, how much time he has before the music plays him out, you know, like the Oscars. Ooh, and that gives me a good fanfare idea. But anyway, everything is working now. We had some more tinkering to do. We have differing opinions about how long it took to get it. Oh, well, they're like 10 minutes spread out over. Yeah, but spread out over 2 or 3 days. Although Scott has been noting, this is taking you. Well, how long have you been doing the show? It's like 10 years, and you don't have the settings right. I make no notes on these things. Somewhere I'll have to. But Greg found an article about the Zoom settings that sort of, led us to the right place, I think. And it had to be Zoom. Zoom was the only thing that changed. But I thought, who knows? It could send everything else going kablooey, too. So we changed a bunch of things. The audio settings on Zoom were, in fact, what we needed to use. We were checking out the share button. And there's a function for sharing computer audio. And that may still be on. I wonder if that even matters, what would happen if I turned it off. But I'm not doing anything now. I'll leave it the way it is. But the first attempt at sharing the audio just shared the screen of my audio soundboard, my software soundboard, with the chat, which that didn't do anything. But over on the other side, well, whatever. You don't care really how it works, just that it does work. That's good news. And as I said, like music that plays you off on the Oscars and lets you know when it's taking me forever to get out of Zoom. I touched Zoom, and it takes 20 minutes to get off the screens of Zoom back to where you want to go, which is here. And today we use the play on music. Not really from the Oscars, of course, but very dramatic. And Greg's here. Good morning. Again, thank you for coming in early to help me fix this thing.
Good morning. That was fun.
Yeah.
So basically, if you put a quarter in the back of the machine, it works.
Right. It's vibrating, but, only for 15 minutes.
Right. So that was good. That was fun.
Yeah.
It's true that we've been doing this for a bit, and we're only now trying to figure out the settings, but that's Zoom.
Yeah.
We didn't always do it on Zoom.
Yeah,
Zoom's really complicated.
And that's Zoom Microsoft? I don't know. Who owns Zoom now? I forget. Who. Google? Did they buy it? Did Microsoft buy it? I don't know.
Micro Google.
Yeah, oops, I almost left the meeting. Oh, cancel that.
Engulf and devour. So,
Holy
everybody.
mackerel. Yeah.
So there's some stuff I want to talk about with you.
Yes.
And we'll see.
I have a feeling
just warning you in advance, I appear to have a bit of a cold and some laryngitis. So I hope my voice lasts the entire time, but we shall see. So
sorry to hear it.
Weird thing happened yesterday.
Yes.
It's a David ends in Y, but the point is that Trump did something that, nobody's ever seen.
Yeah, well.
And Trump's done a lot of stuff, and even then, nobody's ever seen it.
Yes.
The House got together with the Senate, wrangled language, worked on a bipartisan basis with people like Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, you were very excited. The House Congress had done 2 things.
They had done something.
2 of them.
They passed a bill, expecting it to be signed into law.
They certainly
were.
With
bipartisan support, strong support, both parties.
Very
and
strong.
This was a housing affordability bill.
Yes.
Okay, and we talked a little bit about it the other day. Part of the question on the table is so what does this bill actually do?
Oh, yeah.
And nothing immediate.
Nothing at
all.
But
we have to talk about exactly that.
Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't do anything immediate because, for example, it purports to stop private equity from buying up single-family homes.
Yeah.
Without that competition, prices should drop. That's the kind of thing that the bill should do, and it should help, but it takes a while, and it's not immediate. The other day we talked about saving some money on mobile homes by not requiring it to have a frame, since it's not really mobile. Once you move it to where you want it, it stays.
Yeah, but it does sound like, I don't know what they're talking about, and there's industry terms, et cetera, but I feel like houses should have frames.
Well, yeah.
What do you think?
But this is something to make it mobile. You don't need something to permanently make it mobile.
Now that
when
sounds
in fact
like wheels.
It's not.
But okay, I don't know what the terminology is, but yeah, right. Like, you can save $10,000 on a house without a frame. That's a cave.
Yeah, you could save some more money by not having a roof, but that's not the point, right? So.
Yeah, all right. So there were some things, and nothing's going to happen immediately. One of the things that Trump doesn't understand is he's complaining about the oil is flowing. How come gas prices? It takes a while to get into the pipeline.
So this is one of those bills, probably not too different from the One Big Beautiful bill, which may have some tax provisions that may help somebody. Nobody really remembers or cares anymore. And this is one of those bills that Republicans will tout as saying, you see, we do care about affordability. We passed this bill that won't have any effect between now and the elections, but take our word for it, we care.
And it's bipartisan, so if it never works, that's the Democrats' fault.
Right. And so you have what Scott McFarland called political theater. You set up a stage, and then there's a signing ceremony.
Oh, yeah. Oh, does he love signings? Holy cow. Every day.
And that was set up, and it was like within a couple of minutes of happening, and then it didn't happen.
Yes, true.
And the way it didn't happen is Trump put out a notice on Truth Social saying, I'm not signing this stupid bill. It's an Elizabeth Warren bill, and I hate it.
All right. Even though, they were building the stage. I believe you told me, this could have happened anyway, but Virginia Fox wandered onto the stage.
She's there for the ceremony. She walks in, and somebody has to pull her aside and says, excuse me, I'm so sorry, but there won't be a ceremony. And she's just exasperated and says, I'm going back to my office.
Yeah, and as much as it might look like it was an Amber Alert thing, she was supposed to be there.
She was supposed to be there. So, the point is, it was supposed to happen. Now, what happens now? You have this bipartisan bill. Republicans wanted to take credit for it. They think Trump, once again, just like with FISA, is screwing up their agenda.
Yes.
And they're not really sure how to proceed.
Yes.
Trump didn't say he'd veto it. He said he's not signing it.
Right. Important part of the puzzle here, in addition to, it's an Elizabeth Warren bill and I hate it, therefore. There's also, Trump has been threatening for a long time, if you don't pass the Save America Act, I'm not signing any more. Now, he has signed several since, but this one,
But that was his threat. The reason, the ostensible reason he didn't do it is because it doesn't include the Save America Act.
Right.
However, the Save America Act can't get enough votes. We'll talk about that in a moment.
Well, they'll change their minds. He'll punch some people and they'll vote for it.
Well, he's been trying to punch them and it's not working.
But he's inching closer to it by punching them on things they didn't want to vote for before and then making them vote for it. We'll get to that too.
Yeah. So now what? Well, if Trump doesn't sign the bill, it becomes law in 10 days. But not any old 10 days.
That's the Constitution.
10 days from the time that the bill is presented to him formally. I don't know what the term is. But Mike Johnson, because the bill originated in the House, has to present it to Trump. And then from that point, Trump has 10 days to do something. Sign it, veto it, or do nothing, in which case in 10 days it becomes law.
Yeah.
Now, Republicans want this to be law.
Yes. They were going to, you said, they were going to run on it.
They were going to run on it.
As dumb as it is, they were going to run on it.
It wouldn't work, but they were going to run on it. And Trump doesn't care one way or the other because he has no idea what's going on.
I'm not running. You, it's not me. It's you.
Right.
What do I care?
So what now? Was the bill presented to him? We don't know. Did Mike Johnson hold off? Did he going to say that he held off? Is there a record that it was presented? What if he actually goes ahead and vetoes it? What then? So all of this is on the table, and Republicans, especially in the Senate, are really unhappy with this because they think that Trump is just flat out screwing with their ability to win a majority in November.
Yes.
And they're blaming him for it.
Yeah.
And Republicans don't care about much, but one of the things they care about is staying in power.
That's true. And, and it'll be very interesting, especially if he screws up their re-elections and then they lose the majority and then they're very soon faced with an impeachment situation and angry Republicans who said, I told you how to do this and you wouldn't do it this way, and now I'm in the minority and I don't have anything, might say. They're ready to get rid of the
House at least, for impeachment, not for conviction. But,
right. They may go along with it.
If the Democrats take the House, Trump is getting impeached for sure.
They don't need the Republicans in the House if they want to impeach him if the Democrats win. Yeah, the conviction is on the other side, although, the depth of anger among Senate Republicans, even those who have been forced out of office by Trump, is questionable.
Always.
But so normally we talk all the time on the show about the importance of the papers, the physical papers involved in the bill, and what once you've passed, and this wasn't a bill again, it was this one was a bill. Sorry, there's another one that's on the table that it wasn't a bill, but this bill passed by both houses of Congress as required, and they actually have to send one house passes it, they got to send the papers over to the other one, and they look at the paper. Nobody really does, but a clerk does. And then they vote. And then once it's done, they actually sit down with the clerk and make sure that the versions passed by both houses are the same, that it says what they want them to say, and they engross and then enroll the bill. A final copy that totally, definitely, 100% was passed exactly the same way by both houses, put it on parchment. The Speaker of the House signs it. The President pro tem of the Senate signs it. They may have a little ceremony if it's a big deal. And then they send the papers to the White House. And somebody, usually it's some clerk or the presidential secretary, will present them, put them in the inbox, whatever it is. Hand it to somebody who hands it to somebody else who carries it in and tells Trump what it is. He signs it. He shows it to people. That's the papers. So now, the 10-day clock starts with the presentment. So they definitely did pass it in both houses. They definitely, I assume, started and then finished the enrollment process because, as you pointed out, they were so close to the signing ceremony that Virginia Fox showed up. She's the way you can tell, like the atomic time clock, I guess.
They were so close to the signing that the recently departed White House Deputy Chief of Staff, James Blair, who now runs the Trump midterm political operation, wrote on Twitter, it's one of the most significant pieces of housing affordability legislation in American history, and then called it, this is funny, a signature commitment that President Trump laid out in the State of the Union. Well, he has no commitment to signing it, so I don't know what that means, but obviously, they thought it was going to be signed, so it completely blindsided them when he blew it up, as well as the Senate Republicans.
So now,
he didn't want to talk to Thune about it, because previously they had this big meeting, or I shouldn't say previously, I don't know which one came first. The cancellation of the signing perhaps came first, but then they had a luncheon that Rick Scott invited Trump to, and they were supposed to work out some of their differences, and instead Trump spent most of the meeting fighting with Bill Cassidy over the War Powers Act resolution.
Yeah.
And spent most of the time talking about that. Didn't wind up talking about the SAVE Act, which is supposedly the thing that's holding up why he wants to sign, and didn't talk at all about the housing bill.
He doesn't know what's in it, and he doesn't care about it. And I believe, I don't know, the quote that was making the rounds yesterday, I don't know whether it was just somebody speaking in his voice or whether he really said, nobody gives a shit about housing, I think, was the way it was put. With asterisks.
Yeah, that was a quote making the rounds. And apparently that was an off-the-record comment that Trump made to to the Senate.
So, whatever.
He can't work with Thune because Thune keeps telling him, well, you don't have the votes for the SAVE Act.
Yeah. Not even 50, he says.
Yeah. So let me just mention a few things about what is in the SAVE Act.
All right.
There's 3 things, one of which is not bad at all. The one that's not bad at all is it requires IDs to vote nationwide. I don't think any Democrat would object to that. You need a driver's license. You need a photo ID. You need something. Everybody has those at voting places now.
Well, they do require them, and yeah, I mean, I've certainly heard the claim that that's actually difficult to get a hold of, and I mean, yeah, I can see.
Well, states can make it easy, like Virginia has, or they used to,
where they mail it to
with a voter ID.
Right, that's the ID you can use, but now you need a $50 license, real ID. I mean, they've been working for a long time to try to make it as difficult as possible, and
right. But that would be acceptable if they could work out the details of how to do that.
And if they would give people the damn IDs, yeah.
Right. Second thing, you have to have proof of citizenship to register to vote.
There's the problem.
Right now, you're already required to verify you're a citizen, according to the Washington Post, but proof is a different issue. Yeah. For those who change states, newly eligible to vote, get married, your name is different.
Right.
Proof as to why the current name doesn't match the one on your birth certificate, if you have a birth certificate. That's onerous, so
my house burned
Democrats
down,
object to that.
Documents.
And the third one is that it makes voting by mail more difficult, or even in some cases might ban it. That's a problem. I didn't know mail voting went back to the Civil War. But according to some articles, it does.
I can buy that. Postmaster General was, an initial constitutional officer. The postal offices were really huge and important right from the beginning. So,
by the way, the Postmaster General, wants to promulgate a Trump bill, a Trump executive order.
Yes.
That essentially says that if states don't give us their voting rolls,
right, private,
we won't process your votes.
Yeah, we won't mail them. You can't use the United States mail to send ballots. You're not going to receive it. If it somehow makes its way to you and you mail it back, we're not delivering it.
Yeah, I presume they get sued. I presume they lose. But, what a pain in the neck these guys are.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, right? So in all of government and even quasi-governmental response to what? To making it harder to vote. Why?
So this is the SAVE Act that Trump is pushing that doesn't have enough votes, which is holding up everything. FISA, the housing bill, bipartisan housing bill, Republicans want to run on, as you point out. Yep. It's holding up everything because every time something comes up, he says, I know I had agreed to it, and there's only 3 minutes left before we were going to act on it. But I'm not doing it because I don't like Elizabeth Warren, and you didn't pass the SAVE Act.
Yes. Right. So, so now the question becomes, as you pointed out, the Constitution doesn't require the president's signature for a bill to become law. If he doesn't sign it within 10, it's business days. They give you a pass on Sundays for some reason. I believe this has to do with God, so you can ask God about that. And so now, but it only starts the 10-day clock if the papers have been presented. So now comes the question of, did they present them? Normally, before you build a stage and invite people to the signing, you know that the thing has been presented. Mike Johnson said that he has said, it'll become law in 10 days regardless. And then they said, does that mean you presented the papers? And then he started to realize what was going on.
And he wouldn't say.
He now says he didn't. And we don't know for sure. And I went to the congress.gov to check, because usually they track that stuff. It's not up to the minute like, the weather station or anything, but they will put that in there. Every step of the way is documented because they're process people too. And they didn't log it. So I don't know whether it was there and they removed it, because that's possible. Like, you just go onto the website and change the information if you want to, if you control it. Or did they present it to the president or the secretary, the White House Oval Office confidential secretary, whatever I forget what they call that person. There's an actual designated title for it, who carries papers in and out. And
a relatively
they could have it.
Position.
Yeah, but they could be holding it so that, and saying, well, the president hasn't seen it. I haven't given it to the president. That doesn't count. But on the other hand, I have to remind everybody, Donald Trump and his recurring violations of the Presidential Records Act have included everything up to tearing up official records, eating them, stuffing them down the toilet. Everybody remembers this from his first term, right? And he's only gone crazier since then. And I remind you, these people are Electoral College vote certificate forgers. They don't care about the sanctity of the papers. That is ridiculous to them. And they will do anything. If they presented it to the president, they would unpresent it. They would tear it up and eat it. They'd stuff it down the toilet. They'd just tell him you didn't present it. Anything. The simplest thing in the world. Just lie. And you can't put it past them because they would do any of these things. He could just veto it in the end, just to, do a strong show of something. They wouldn't get 2/3. I don't think they could get to, maybe they could get to 2/3 because it was a pretty wide margin. But they could do it, but that would be embarrassing. My guess is if he's somehow forced to make a choice and either veto it because the 10-day clock is ruled to have run, he would just say, all right, I'm going to veto it. Just go back and change the number 1 to 2 in the dollar amount and repass the same thing, and I'll sign that one. Or we'll restart the clock on that one. Or we won't start the clock on that one. He'll manipulate everything. It was a big day for manipulation of process.
So Semaphore and Politico and Punchbowl, places like that, those outlets that are following the TikTok, the minute-to-minute, what's going on here, are suggesting that Senate Republicans aren't even speaking to Trump right now about what to do about this.
If they speak to him, they might end up doing what he asks, because that's what's happening. So if they're, to the extent they want to hold their position, they have to put their fingers in their ears and not listen to him.
Well, the other side of the coin is there's supposed to be a recess.
Oh, is that right? I didn't even realize that was going on.
Yeah, because they tried to get this War Powers Act undo the War Powers Act resolution.
Oh, yeah, right.
Is non-binding, but instructs the president not to wage war without telling Congress. And Trump didn't like it, so started yelling at Bill Cassidy at this Senate meeting. And Cassidy changed his vote so that it then passed, but it's non-binding. And so I don't think normies are going to pay any attention to this back and forth. It's all for Trump's ego.
Yeah.
But the idea was after they did that, then they were going to take a 2-week break.
Well, yeah, July 4th is coming up, and nobody wanted to be here in Washington for that. Isn't that weird? They all wanted to leave Washington, D.C. for the 250th. But, yeah, so the War Powers Resolution was one of the two things that you mentioned yesterday that had passed, that Congress actually did something. One was the housing bill, and then they undid that, sort of. And then the War Powers Resolution had passed in both the House and the Senate, and then Trump went to the Hill and met with all the Republicans in the Senate and yelled at Cassidy. And Cassidy then, he said he stood up for himself. And then I guess they must have had a motion to reconsider the War Powers Resolution, and they just said, we voted for it yesterday, but we're voting against it today. So That's the end of it won't change any of what's binding on the president or what he was going to do about it, which was he was going to ignore it anyway, but he didn't want the embarrassment of having lost it. So one of the free agents that Trump pushed out of office, who was definitely going to spend all the time he had left standing on principle and standing up to this guy who screwed up his political career, said, you actually will go along in the end anyway. So, yeah, anything's possible. And this is another one of those days where none of this stuff works the way Trump says he wanted it to go, but he just intimidated everybody into jumping out of the way, such that there were no objections to his doing it the wrong way, and it ended up being done. And he now thinks this is part of a president's power. The Congress passes a bill and I don't like it. I have options. I can veto it or just say, I didn't see it. It didn't come to me. It's not law. And everybody will just agree that
or he
can.
could yell at them. There's a number of tools.
He
would want to.
That's the end of that.
It's very strange stuff, and you just scratch your head and you wonder, what is it going to take for Republicans to act normally, and do things in the interest of the country as opposed to their own interest? I say that because the electorate is angry. They're angry at Republicans for this kind of crap. They're angry at Democrats for, quote, not standing up, which is tougher when you don't have the votes. We've talked about that a lot. But they're angry at Republicans for pulling stuff like that. They don't really care whether or not there is a doing or an undoing of a war powers resolution. Prices are what prices are. Yeah. And people are not happy about it. This is Reuters poll, for example, from yesterday. Okay. Q and US say Iran war was worth it. Trump approval ties lowest of term. Reuters Ipsos poll finds approval rating falls to 34, returning to the lowest level of his second term. 63% of Americans said a truce with Tehran was unlikely to last. Only 23% said the U.S. was stronger after the war with Iran.
Well,
given the rally around the flag effect, that's a phenomenally low number.
Yeah, and it's a big rally around the flag time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yet no one will rally. That's an odd one. He couldn't even get people to rally at his rally that he had yesterday.
Yeah, so the whole idea that, Trump will just boost his approval ratings and that will help Republicans in November. How?
I don't know.
Prices aren't going down. The Iran war is in limbo. It's Schrodinger's war. We're either at war or not at war, depending upon. But don't look, because if you look, then you'll, change the
Don't look
equation.
At the reflecting pool. Don't look at Iran. Nothing. Yeah. Oh, hey, do you hear the music?
I do.
Okay, good. Just checking. Here's something interesting, by the way. I went to check the Senate voting records, so I really am confused. I was looking for a motion to reconsider the War Powers Resolution, and they did not do that.
What did they do?
This is weird. They voted on a totally separate thing that said the same thing and voted no on it this time. That's very weird. I can't explain it.
Hi, Kagro in the Morning listeners. This is Rebecca Romans, longtime listener and longtime supporter of the show. Do you love your non-corporatized, completely independent, commercial-free Kagro in the Morning show? Do you stand out among the crowd at the office water cooler when discussing current events because of all the up-to-the-minute news you've been brought by David Waldman? Then it's time to give back a little. David relies on contributions from listeners like you and me to keep this show on the air. Patreon.com is among the easiest ways to make secure recurring monthly donations to support the show. Patreon.com/KagroX will bring you straight to his donation page, where you can sign up for any convenient tier you like. A mere $5 a month. You'll never miss it. Works out to about 25 cents a show. That means that David is making 12.5 cents an hour, which, by coincidence, is exactly what the GOP wants to lower the federal minimum wage to. Once again, David is ahead of the curve. If Patreon.com doesn't sound like your kind of thing, there's always PayPal, or even the Square Cash app. Any way you choose to donate, please choose to donate. And thank you on behalf of David and the rest of us listeners. Thank you very much.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. We had a mini show during the 2-minute things. This procedure, I'll just quickly, I hope, update you on this without eating up too much more of Greg's time here. But I thought, my guess was when, this whole thing was laid out, and I did see people complaining on social media, they can't undo this War Powers resolution. It's done. They approved it already. What do you mean they unapproved it? And that did seem pretty bizarre. And I thought it might be they in the Senate, you can move to reconsider previous votes. I don't know. I mean, I guess normally it's not done all that often on stuff that's like, well, we've completed work on this thing and sent it to the president. They don't tend to reconsider those votes. But you may remember from over the years, why did, let's say, Harry Reid, why did he vote yes on this Republican bill? Or why did he vote no on this bill where we wanted him to vote yes? And they would say, well, he voted that way for procedural reasons. Sometimes they tell you what it is. And it's usually
that he was going to lose, so by voting no, he gets to bring it up at a later date.
If you vote out with the winning side, you can make a motion to reconsider later on. So I thought, well, I'm not that familiar with the procedure of motions to reconsider, but okay, maybe they did that. But instead, they did something equally weird, although it alludes to something I said they could try to do with the housing bill. Just redo the whole thing from the start, but with a different number and maybe some different text, or maybe not different text. You know, if he decides he's going to veto the housing bill and they don't want to override it, but Trump hints later on he would sign it for reasons, you just repass it quickly, hopefully, under another number. So here's what happened. On June 23rd, earlier in the week, the Senate, you know, to moderate fanfare, I think we have that fanfare, said they would agree with House Concurrent Resolution 86, which, you know, in their blah, 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 their titling language. A concurrent resolution, remember the non-binding kind, directing the president, pursuant to Section 5C of the War Powers Resolution, to remove United States armed forces from hostilities with Iran. All right. Directing the president. Doesn't really work, whatever, but that's what this is all about. That passed 50 to 48 in the Senate. So yesterday we were told they undid it, but here's what actually happened. On a motion to proceed to consideration of Senate Joint Resolution 185, and a joint resolution is the kind that is binding and does go to the president for signature, unless, of course, they lose the paper or say he never got it. Senate Joint Resolution 185 is a joint resolution to direct the removal of United States armed forces from hostilities within or against the Islamic Republic of Iran that have not been authorized by Congress. So the move here was, rather than bothering to undo the non-binding one, I'm not certain who asked for this or what they thought they were getting out of it, but maybe the president said, I'm embarrassed by your concurrent resolution, but I don't have to do anything with it. I don't know if he designed this thing or somebody else did, but they said, why don't we make a binding one? I'll see who wrote it. We'll come up with a binding one, and then we'll have debate on it, and let's just defeat that. They didn't even defeat that. They defeated the motion to proceed to it by the same vote, I think, after they flopped people around a little bit and got to, what was it? Oh, the vote was, I think, the same 50, maybe to 40, 47 to 50, 47 in favor of the motion to proceed. So the motion to proceed fails, so that's the end of it. But they wrote a whole new bill or used a whole new vehicle to put a rejection on the record. Okay. I mean, it's nice that it was Tim Kaine introduced the thing, that he brought something that would at least purported to be binding on the president. The president can still ignore it. And the slight difference in the wording, one was to direct the president to withdraw forces, and this other one was to direct the withdrawal of those forces. Like, skip the president. We're directing the removal of these forces because they weren't authorized by Congress. And, you know, this Supreme Court would say, you can't do that anyway, probably. But what a procedural, well, it's a great procedural day, but also a nightmare for the country.
Right. So this was all part and parcel, because it was the same day as the meeting that Trump had with Republican senators. And Senator Kramer said that, yes, Trump wants to pass the SAVE Act, but we don't have the votes. And Thune explains it to him as often as Trump will listen, which is not very often these days. Mm-hmm. And Trump keeps saying, well, just get rid of the filibuster and then you could pass it. And Kramer says, but we still don't have the votes.
Right. Like, yeah, you need.
So then Kramer said at this meeting, the filibuster idea didn't really come up because there's nothing new to say. Everybody knows what their position is.
Yeah.
And so they spent most of the time yelling at Bill Cassidy about this War Powers Act.
Yeah, remember, he doesn't care anymore. He's a free and independent spirit now.
Right.
But he
afterwards, this is in Semaphore. Afterwards, Trump said it was a great meeting and praised Senate Majority Leader John Thune before concluding that, I don't like a few people here, but for the most part, we have a really well-unified party. But a second person briefed on the meeting offered a more blunt assessment. Oh. This meeting was a total clusterfuck.
Oh, well, that is blunt, isn't it? Here, put this sound over the thing you just said. There you go.
Okay, good. We'll do that.
We're for kids. I always tell that.
So very complicated. And so, again, Trump is making it worse. It's not clear what the going forward path is going to be, particularly if the Senate takes a July 4th 2-week break and disappears, which I think they're supposed to do.
Yes, I
guess.
Then what? Stay home. We don't need Congress anymore. Forget it.
Right.
We're starting this whole thing over again.
It's Thursday. That means over on the House side, it's hard to get anything done there because, like, there are certain things that can't be done on Thursdays and Fridays.
Oh, yeah. They do have weird rules, different types of legislation or motions that can and can't be made. I don't know if they had any plans, but
right. So
it's also hard
again, Republicans can't take credit for anything. They still have all the same messes. Normal people are not aware of any of this inside baseball stuff, but it's all pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is Republicans are trying to lie about the economy, and Trump took even that away from them.
Yeah. Trump take excuse, everything, a little egg excuse. Trump, back when we were taking eggs. Yeah, I don't know. And they'll come up with some other stupid way of bringing it back, I guess. I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll come up with a concurrent resolution. We think you should have more houses. And do it that way and then run on that. No one knows the difference anyway.
Yeah, people should just live in each other's houses, problem solved. Let's move on to something we really care about, like the reflecting pool.
Sure, yes. The focus of every bit of energy. It's fair.
Well, that's the way he thinks anyway. Yeah. Axios tries to take a big picture view of what's going on, and they claim that the American politics reordering that Trump did by winning is imploding in substantial ways. They say MAGA is splintering between Trump enthusiasts and true America First believers.
All right.
And they cite people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and now Tucker Carlson who say that they don't want to have anything to do with Republicans anymore.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's fine in terms of those individuals, but they represent a subset, a faction.
Right.
And when you're already behind, you can't afford to lose 5 to 8 to 10%. Yeah.
Marjorie Taylor, like half of her gym is frustrated now.
At the same time, on the Democratic side, the Democratic Socialists have won, and they're rising in popularity and clout, and Democratic leaders are not really sure what to do about it. And there's, I think, a whole lot big picture stuff to be said about that.
Yeah.
And that's why it's worth looking at that New York City election, even though it's New York City. No, it doesn't mean that you can run a DSA member anywhere and win, but you can run a DSA member a lot of places and win.
Yeah.
At least a primary. And so we'll see what happens from there. The thing that caught my eye about all of that, though, are the analysts who are trying to figure out what it really all means.
Oh, really means?
For example, well, Adam Carlson had a good summary.
Okay.
Said, I think people are trying to draw too many national implications because New York City politics is its own beast. But if you're in a deep blue district, unless it's predominantly old and black, and you have any past association with AIPAC or a staunch Israel supporter, you got to readjust. That is not where the Democratic Party is right now.
Yeah, and I mean, if you have a constituency that's there, you'll win and you'll have no problems. Don't worry about it.
Second point, with the exception of seniors, primary voters in these types of districts seem to be increasingly willing to forgive controversial old social media posts, especially if you're perceived to have moral clarity on other issues, or if you're charismatic.
True. Yeah. Now, look, that's always true.
Yeah, but that is New York 13, where...
just them,
huh? Where Chevalier beat Espiat, the 13. Upcoming rebel, from the DSA, beat the incumbent.
Yes.
And that's who that is applied to, because she had a bunch of otherwise you'd think disqualifying tweets, but people didn't really care about that so much as they cared about other things that were going on.
Yeah,
I mentioned that because Maine, that's also true in Maine, and that's how Graham Plattner is still a candidate.
Yeah, so just so those of you keeping track, you can do that in New York City, but you can't do that in rural places like Maine unless you do.
Unless you can.
Right, in which case, yeah, so that's the charisma exception?
Maybe.
A tattoo, maybe?
Probably more charisma than moral clarity.
Yeah. We haven't come
I would think. Those are your two, Chevalier may have had moral clarity on other issues. Or if you're charismatic, I guess, would be Plattner.
Yeah, I guess so. It may be the beard. It's a magic beard.
Now, this is something I'm really intrigued by, because I said this the other day and got in some arguments with people about it, but I think I'm right. That is saying that you're a fighter solely because you'll stand up to Trump isn't enough. This isn't 2018.
Okay. Yeah.
So we talked about ads, the generic, low budget ads that all the candidates are playing. He'll fight against Trump. He'll stop prices going up. He'll do something that is good. I know he'll fight data centers, vote for this guy, You have to have specifics. And one of the things that's happened in these New York city elections is that, rightly or wrongly, whether it's good policy or bad policy, the DSA candidates have policy.
Yeah.
They have a position. You know where they stand.
Sure.
That's worth something in elections.
They got room
and
for
that.
And for
Democrats to sort of fuzz it and say, well, I'm a fighter, not good enough. What are your specifics?
Yeah, fighting for what? Exactly. Well, I hate Trump. I know. We do too. And by the way, yeah, like the data center thing, I'm sure there's plenty of opposition to it in New York 13 and everywhere else, but they're not going to put a data center there. No one's got any plans for that. They oppose that in theory. They'll be good allies on that front, I'm sure. But yeah, what about like me and my parking and my housing and how much it costs me to buy food?
Right.
Yes,
now,
those things.
If you're looking at
things,
voters,
things moderates are supposed to like.
Yeah, but if you're looking at voters,
yeah, let's look at them.
A state like Maine has one of the older voting populations in the country.
Well, yeah. Yes. They can get
younger
there,
voters don't care, says Adam Carlson, if you bring home the pork to the district. Espaillat and his seniority didn't matter, in other words.
Yeah, and how
younger
much
voters have other
really
issues
have?
they're much more concerned about.
Sure.
Collins wins in Maine by constituent service. That's going to work with older voters. It may not work with younger voters, but are there enough younger voters to show up to make a difference and vote for Plattner? So we're going to have to see about that.
Yes. Wouldn't it be ironic if the Quiverful people gave us enough young voters to change that?
Huh. Now, we talked about Mike Lawler's district yesterday,
right.
New York 17, and Adam Carlson makes the point in swing districts is still an appetite for candidates primary voters see as the most electable in the general election. So it's not like, okay, the Democratic Party has collapsed and none of their candidates won.
Yeah.
You have to pick and choose and see where.
Not even in New York City is this true.
Yeah. On the other hand, there's a lot of DSA or DSA-sponsored or Mandami-endorsed candidates, both at state level and in these congressional districts that did quite well. So there is an anger in the Democratic base, in the populace, in those who vote, the activists, those who are paying attention. And you're not going to satisfy it by saying, well, we have rules and regulations we have to follow. There's only so much we can do, and I'm bringing home a lot of money for the district. That's not going to necessarily help you. Machines won't help you. The people who are voting are changing, and those changing demographics, changing populations are going to make a great deal of difference. So if your district isn't changing, maybe you can get away with that. If your district is more conservative, maybe you can get away with that. But New York City is like none of those things.
All right. Yeah, but not even across the board. There's lots of room for differences, even in New York City, and different people are winning in different places. And by the way, in New York City, where the jurisdictions, the constituencies not overlap, but they're close and interlocking, and you can cross 4 districts in a taxi cab ride. Right. Someone else can take care of bringing home the bacon, even if it goes outside of their district.
Right.
I mean, don't worry about
Jill Filipovic?
Yes, okay.
Very nice piece here, Rage Against the Machine, and her view of what happened in New York. And one of the things that she brings up, which I think is important and probably true, it's not a coincidence, she says, that this emerging crop of socialist electeds are young or that many of them came from the pro-Palestine movement. The mainstream Democratic Party has utterly failed to make room for young leaders. It's utterly failed to cultivate young talent. And it has certainly failed to foster the kinds of ideological communities that excite and engage the young and idealistic.
Yeah.
So, you gotta be for something. Mandami, the Knicks, people get excited when they're for something.
Yeah.
And just hanging around and saying, okay, well, low turnout, off calendar, off calendar, July, June, if I'm going to go out and vote, I got to be motivated or I'm not going.
Yeah, all right. And so they got some more exciting people, or at least some exciting causes championed by certain people. So, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of, I guess, 24 hours or 48 hours anyway, watching this fallout. I did notice this morning, I haven't read the article it was connected to, but I always see Tegan Goddard summing things up in one line, usually, and pointing out that the Democratic centrists, he said in his line, were freaking out over this. Although I did wonder whether we shouldn't expect the centrists to have a more moderate reaction to things than freaking out, but apparently they were freaking out. And it was interesting. You know what it reminded me of, actually? I was thinking, like, well, it's interesting we're not hearing Democratic moderates and centrists saying, well, we really need to either find some compromise with the DSA insurgents who are winning office or reach out to their voters to try and understand their motivations. These are the things they say about Republicans. But interestingly, no interest in reaching out and figuring out what's going on with Democrats, which seems odd to me.
Again, if you step back and look at the bigger picture, in my view,
yeah,
it's that moderates in leadership and leadership without moderates are predominantly concerned with getting incumbents reelected. What happened is that two incumbents lost. That's why they're freaking out. It's got nothing to do with whether or not you're moderate or liberal or progressive or any policy thing whatsoever. The fact that incumbents are being challenged and being beaten is what's upsetting them.
I guess
that's why
that's
they're
true.
freaking out.
I figured, well, since a lot of these things happened in the New York City market and right in front of the New York Times, as you were saying, what's important is what the editor saw on his way to work that day.
Yeah.
There you go. So the paper of record for the United States of America, I guess, says, all right,
it's
going to
go and
people freak out.
They can't get down to West Virginia to a diner because those folks don't really understand what's going on in New York and don't care. So they'll go to Long Island and they'll ask Tom Swansea.
Why go to Long Island? This happened in the boroughs. There's places to eat there. Go to their diners and ask them. But no, they don't do that. It did remind me, though, a little bit. I couldn't quite make the analogy work, but I was sort of thinking, if moderates were, in fact, freaking out, which is not a very moderate thing to do, and were not choosing to do the things that they prescribe for dealing with Republicans who will never vote for them, let's understand them, let's reach out, let's find compromise. It kind of reminded me a little bit, since, of course, a lot of these centrists and moderates are running around saying, the problem with these DSA guys is that they're radicals and they're going too far left and they're going to make everybody think we've gone off the deep end and it's just as bad. It's blue MAGA. There are comparisons to be made, but I don't think that's it. But
right.
Then I was sort of thinking of your point about some of the pro-Palestinian protesters showing up only at Democratic events and protesting Democrats, and why aren't you protesting Republicans who are far worse and are setting the policy agenda at the federal level, which is the only level for diplomacy, and why not? And, that's a good point, and I wondered about, how come why is it focused that way? I have an answer, but it's not a satisfactory answer. They think they can move the needle with Democrats and not Republicans, but still, right? Why aren't you making that protest? And then I don't know. That really was what I was reminded of when I saw moderates freaking out. Like, well, how come you're not, why are you focusing on attracting votes you're never going to get from the Republican Party and not talking and seeking compromise with people who are actually closer to you? It's weird that you're doing that weird thing, but that's normal and American. And the people who should be protesting Republicans also not doing it, that's terrible and un-American. Well, I don't know. Neither of you guys seem to be hewing to your, what should be your strictest principles. Well, your principles, not mine. So I don't know. But it seemed odd to me that everybody was all of a sudden, when pressed and in dire straits, doing not that thing that they said they were going to do, or not the most effective, in my view, target for it. But I guess they disagree with me. Oh, well, it's worth pointing out, though. And so also, by the way, I should say that there's lots of response from ostensible moderates and centrists saying, are we freaking out? We're not freaking out. Maybe a guy freaked out. You can't make that your headline. And that seems like sensible pushback, too. What if there's somebody who's not freaking out? We should talk to that guy. I don't know. I just wanted to point that one out because that's the topic of discussion for the day.
And, that's pretty much the summary for Thursday.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you were done 10 minutes ago. What am I doing?
Yeah.
I should let you go to breakfast already.
Yeah, the question is, what am I doing?
Right. Well, the answer to what I
know.
The
answer is I don't have anything else to present to you, but that's the State of the Union for right now.
I guess that's right. You just did a State of the Union address. Why did I listen to this?
I don't know.
I
know why you didn't listen.
Right. What am I doing?
You don't listen to State of the Unions.
That's why I wasn't paying any attention. Well, okay. I think that sets us up nicely, and it is Thursday, and Congress, like you, can now go home for the weekend, except you're coming back next week, and they're not.
Right.
Good. Okay.
So enjoy, and I hope you have a lovely weekend.
Well,
and July 4th is coming, but not right away.
Oh, yeah.
And
when
then
do we
go from there?
Okay. Very good. 25th, 26th, tomorrow, 7th, 28th. 29th, so there's still a ways to go to July 4th.
Yeah,
okay,
5 more days in June.
Right. So
less than
obviously,
2 weeks.
If you leave work and just take the time off or away from Washington and work elsewhere, they're working remotely.
Well, I wonder if July 4th will be canceled because the Senate didn't pass the SAVE Act.
Yeah, I'm not allowing it. Right. I'm not going to sign the Declaration of Independence the second time. Yeah, I'm not certain. Well, most things are being canceled. Although yesterday was the big rally on the mall that was supposed to be a concert, but everybody canceled. And then Trump said, I'm going to do a speech. And said, I thought that was going to be July 4th, but apparently it was yesterday.
Well,
so
didn't get a lot of attention.
Promoting it. Right. I saw a little bit of live coverage from Blue Sky posters sending video, but that was sparsely attended. Nobody's saying, although I didn't see any clips of her doing it, but I understood that almost all of the musical acts canceled. But they did get another one at the last minute. And I don't know her name. It's Kash Patel's girlfriend, who is an aspiring country singer. So maybe she's more than aspiring. And she came, I guess, or was supposed to come and sing. I didn't see any clips of her singing, so maybe if it picks her, it didn't happen, I guess. Trump
probably
came
Zoom
and gave
settings weren't right, so you couldn't hear it.
Yeah, that was it. No music comes through. But then Trump came and gave his regular rally speech. I hate Democrats. The newspapers suck. Things like that. And again, nobody noticed. And people left as soon as he started speaking. It was a real, bummer of a show. Weird. But they did get, what's his name from the transportation department? The Sean, whose name I can never remember.
Sean Duffy?
Yeah, maybe. Yes, I think so, unless it's the other one. Yeah.
Sean Spicer.
There's I always confuse him with Parnell. But Sean Duffy came to say, in dignified American uniting nonpartisan fashion, that Trump was going to come there and speak, and they were going to have music, but they were going to have music that was better than all the libtards who canceled on us.
Oh, that's good.
Yay, lifting up the discourse. No comment on that from... Where are my civil discourse friends? Don't know. Maybe they're taking 2 weeks off like Congress. All right.
And with that, I will take off, and I will see you on Monday. I know, you probably
have to get going already. All right. I'm reluctant to let you go, but thank you very much. Go away and come back next week. And thank you. And thanks for spending the extra time helping us tinker with the sound before the show. All right. Where's my reverse fanfare? I can play you off with that. That's in here somewhere. Okay. And I was able to do that without objection, and so ordered, because, as soon as the music started, he hung up. That's good. All right, well, it's late in the day. Time for him to get on with other things. Let me see what this is here. I just saw Jen Bendery here posting on Blue Sky, senior politics reporter for HuffPost, by the way, saying, I missed that late last night. When did this get posted? This morning, yeah. I missed it late last night. The Senate held another vote on an Iran war powers resolution. You didn't miss it. I told you about it. They already passed the one that passed the House earlier this week for the sole purpose of voting it down in a show to Trump that they support him. and then a bunch of laughing until you cry emojis that are Elon Musk's favorite, but you can't let him have that. And she goes on talking about a little bit more, as in the House already passed a bipartisan Iran powers resolution rebuking Trump and his war, and the Senate passed it too earlier this week. And then Senate Republicans put this other resolution on the floor last night and were like, sorry if that other vote made you mad, which is, I guess, kind of the only explanation for the way they did things. Then there's an article involved here, and it may be her own because I see it's a HuffPost link. They did this hours after they had a testy lunch with Trump. I don't know why they sat down to a lunch of testes, but they decided to do it. It's not my call. During which Senator Bill Cassidy yelled at him over his never-ending war in Iran. Headline on that piece, Gops Senator calls out Trump to his face in testy, get it, Capitol Hill meeting. And then, of course, when they finally held that vote on the resolution, Cassidy voted against the motion to proceed to its consideration. So he stood up to Trump to his face, and then he did Trump's bidding later on, like a tough kind of person, whatever you would call. I'm sure the excuse is, well, I voted for the non-binding one because I believe that separation of powers, yargle bargle, and this one was violative of the separation of powers, except it really isn't. The power is actually explicitly in your hands, the power to declare war. But yeah, it gets a little murky when it gets to war powers resolution/act, which you remember from my never-ending reading of the procedural history around it. Anyway, I just find it interesting that, so that's, he got the headlines of I stood up to Trump to his face, and then I did his bidding later on that evening. And I guess that's what Jen's talking about. And so they rejected this War Powers Resolution 4750. In fact, it was the motion to proceed to it. 4 Republicans voted yes earlier this week. On this vote, Cassidy flipped his vote to no. Rand Paul voted present. Murkowski and Collins remained yes, interestingly enough. 2 missed the vote. That's Michael Bennet of Colorado, the Democrat, and Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky, but he's in the hospital. So there you go. Well, that took a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. I don't know why. It looked like the music was still playing, and the timing was odd, but I ran over to try and heat up the tea, and I think that screwed everything up. Okay, well, I thought I had the time to do it, even though it was a 1-minute break. So I apologize for that, and I assume that if we try to fix it, it will take the upstairs editing suite all day to do it, so just bear with me. By the way, that does remind me, over the end of last week, Friday, if you were one of the few who stayed and listened to the rebroadcast of our previous year's episode, I was reminded by listening to it myself that it was a collector's item. If you didn't listen to it, it must have been produced originally during the upstairs editor's trip to upstate New York for a friend's wedding, which was my first exposure to using his editing software, the much more advanced MixPad, versus my very simplistic WavePad. And of course, MixPad was the software that enabled him to put us all on separate audio tracks and much more easily manipulate things when, for instance, Greg has something extra to try to squeeze in before the break and it doesn't quite make it, and we can back it up in the podcast and get it in there. Or, if one of us falls asleep, vomits during the show, whatever, you can edit that out without ruining the other person's audio. It's great. It's exactly what we needed. But the MixPad thing was very complicated. And he left me great instructions, fantastic, but they didn't work. But that's my fault, not his. Great instructions on how to go through the process and make this thing work, including what to do in case of weird emergencies like someone vomiting on the air. So, anyway, I guess it was must have been my first stab at it, and at least one of the breaks, the music that plays us in and out, I played it during the live show, and it didn't make it to the podcast because of the way I edited the thing. I edited it wrong, so there were some really weird, dead air returns from the break. The timing is right, but the music isn't there. So ordinarily I wouldn't replay those things because there's a mistake in it and people have to think I'm perfect. But or I would go back and try and re-edit it and put the music in, but I was going on a little mini vacation and I didn't have the time to do that. So collector's item, you heard an error replayed. Anyway, now there'll be an error in this one, and maybe next year if I go to the beach on June 25th, you'll hear this show on Friday. Okay, so where were we? Jen Bendery was explaining what went on with the War Powers resolutions and explaining who missed the votes, right, and who flipped. Cassidy flipped, Rand Paul semi-flipped, and went from a yes on invoking the War Powers resolution thingy to a present on it. Murkowski and Collins remained yes, so they'll have to deal with that in her re-election campaign up in Maine. They'll be reaching out to Democrats saying, look how moderate I am. So Jen goes on to say, here's the full vote tally. It was at 10:30 p.m. last night. That's what I was looking over before. Senator Tim Kaine, who has led on efforts to pass war powers measures, said last night's vote was the result of Trump browbeating Republicans for upholding their oaths of office in their testy lunch meeting. There's the testes again. And an attempt to appease his temper tantrum. Yes, the testy temper tantrum. It's always happening over there. The vote is of no consequence and does not undo the expressed position of Congress that further war against Iran is illegal unless Congress votes for it, Kaine said in a statement. That's a yes in the sense that those of us, and it included me up until earlier in the show, who thought that what was being reported was that they voted to undo the War Powers resolution they had earlier passed, that didn't happen. But it doesn't matter so much because it's, technically non-binding. This was a binding measure. I'm glad to see Kaine and Democrats bringing this thing forward and getting some Republican votes for it. Much more direct and binding, and under the Senate joint resolution header, not concurrent resolution, though it could be vetoed. So there was that. And I guess that's probably the point of differentiation that Republicans will cling to. Well, the other one was not vetoable, but also not binding, and I felt more comfortable with that. Whereas this one was subject to a veto anyway, and he would have vetoed it, so I didn't feel compelled to risk any further wrath from him from something that wasn't going to go anywhere anyway. So, I don't know. I think that gives you some sense of the nuance of what was going on, and might help explain the otherwise just incompatible, facially incompatible votes. Let's see what Jen had to report in the longer piece on it. It's not huge, but it might help us fill in some blanks. Gops senator calls out Trump to his face in testy Capitol Hill meeting. It's all testes today, folks. As I recall, Senator Bill Cassidy said, he did not particularly care for my comments. Arthur Delaney joins Jennifer Bendery in the headline byline on this one from yesterday, and it must have been late. Oh, no, this is the report on the meeting. So good, that'll give us some more detail on a different part of the story, because this is from 3:45 p.m. yesterday. They hadn't had the vote yet. Let's see. So Bill Cassidy and Trump had it out during a closed-door meeting at the Capitol on Wednesday. It started with Trump asking Senate Republicans why anyone would vote for a resolution to end the war in Iran, as four of them had done on Tuesday, despite ongoing peace negotiations. Well, that's a hell of a question, Mr. President. Why would you vote for something to end the war in Iran when we're already ending the war in Iran? Well, why wouldn't I? Because everybody wants to end the war in Iran. Us too. What's the problem? But I see, I want you to sit by and let me. It's already ending. I'm negotiating the end. Why don't you let me finish? And, good answer to that would be you keep saying it's imminent and then it's never imminent. It's, it keeps getting pushed back. We want it to end now, and you want it to end 2 weeks, very short period of time, whatever. That's not sufficient. He asked, why would anybody vote for the War Powers Act? As he continued, I said, is that a rhetorical question, or would you really like to know? And he said, I'd like to know. And that's a lie, I would add. But that's what Cassidy told reporters after the meeting that Trump said. I would like to know. I stood and said, you have not told the American people what's going on. It was supposed to last 4 weeks, and it's lasted 4 months. Our original objectives have not been achieved, and I want to know what's going on. I'll pause here for a sip of tea since I worked so hard on it during the break. And it's not even all that hot. If it was a 2-minute break, it definitely would have been hotter. Cassidy said he told the president he'd continue voting for resolutions to end the war until the... That's where the joke starts. Oh, yeah, well, I'll continue voting for resolutions to end the war until the administration gives lawmakers a briefing. Oh, right, he got the briefing. That's right, I forgot. He said... That's very good. They technically hewed the line to the line there. He said the account was not necessarily verbatim, but other senators confirmed there had been a testy exchange. I'm just going to read it that way. Normally, you read it, there had been a testy exchange, but I say there was a testy exchange. Anyway, as I recall, Cassidy continued, he did not particularly care for my comments, raised his voice, of course. I lost my temper. That's inappropriate. It's the Irish in me. Oh, God. But I again matched his tone and his volume, and it went back and forth. But at some point, my guys said, all right, Bill, sit down. And so I sat down and tried to de-escalate. It's a rarity for a Republican, isn't it? The conversation was about the Iran war, but the confrontation came as the president had repeatedly needled senators. Last week, he upended Senate plans to confirm their preferred candidate to lead U.S. spy agencies. And early on Wednesday, Trump announced he wouldn't sign a bipartisan housing bill until Congress passes an election bill that's already failed in the Senate repeatedly. He's also endorsed primary challengers who have successfully ousted both Cassidy and Senator John Cornyn. Senators have also been upset by the president's handling of the Iran war. The administration has refused to brief them on a peace deal he's negotiating. What would he possibly say to them about it? Which includes terms weaker than those of a deal negotiated by former President Barack Obama's administration that Republicans have spent more than a decade condemning. I am sticking up for the American people, even if I'm speaking to the president, Cassidy said, but not for long. Of course, Cassidy might not have found himself sticking up for the American people if the president had not endorsed his primary opponent and ended his Senate career. Cassidy cast his first vote against the war in Iran after losing his primary last month. He also voted to convict the president for inciting an insurrection on January 6, 2021. That's true. Cassidy said the president mocked him for losing the election. Whatever, this is Cassidy speaking. Whatever, comes to mind as to demean another person, Cassidy said. Well, that really didn't clear anything up. Of course, I lost the election. Way to observe that. That was human. At one point, the Louisiana senator stopped referring to Trump as Mr. President and called him brother. That's interesting. Senator Jim Justice told reporters. But that's very nice. It's very Christian of him, don't you think? Several Republicans trickled out of the lunch tight-lipped, that's because of all the testes, I guess, offering apparently sarcastic responses about everything going well. A spirited conversation, as all Ted Cruz said, ducking into the Senate chamber. Lots of unity, Senator Rand Paul told reporters with a smug look on his face. Lots of Republican love on Republicans. There's those testes again. Asked if he was joking, he replied, me, sarcastic? Justice said it was not our justice, but the bad one from West Virginia. Said it was clear that Cassidy and Trump were each spoiling for some sort of confrontation. The president seemed to come to the meeting mad about Cassidy and a handful of other Republicans voting to publicly rebuke his war on Iran. And Cassidy is still likely sore about Trump torpedoing his reelection. It's hard not to harbor feelings, Justice said, because Bill Cassidy voted for impeachment, And Bill Cassidy just lost the election, so he's feeling bad. Ooh, Justice sticking it to him there. The president still harbors bad feelings. I mean, after all, that's natural. But not natural for Bill Cassidy, I guess. As for the tone of the exchange, he said both were respectful, but both expressed their feelings and didn't hold back. How nice. And now they won't need therapy. Terrific. Well, it's interesting, to say the least about it. And so, yeah, remember, the point I guess I took away from this one, besides testes, which, okay, was this, that Cassidy said, I voted against it and I'll continue voting against the war in Iran until I get a briefing, because you guys didn't brief us. That's why I'm against the war. And then there was a briefing. It's not mentioned in this article, but I saw it in some of the other conversation early this morning. So I guess he got, quote unquote, invited, maybe summoned to the White House for a quote unquote briefing. After which, who knows what garbage they told him. It doesn't really matter. They said it was a briefing. He agreed to say it was a briefing. And now I've got a briefing, so there's my excuse to change my vote on the War Powers Resolution. Lots of other things could have changed his mind too, but they all played a small part in there. The nature of the resolution was different. The binding effect of the resolution was different. The ultimate outcome in terms of a presidential veto was different. And the claim that we haven't had a briefing was different. Not us, but not we, I have now had a thing that I've agreed to call a briefing. So there you go. I think that's what happened there. All right. So let's see. Do we care then? I think we've covered it. Politico had a piece about the cancellation of the signing of the major housing bill. I think we've probably covered everything. I don't know if I want to spend any more time bearing down on it. I'll check it out after the show, and if there's any hidden gems in it, we can bring it to you tomorrow. or I could forget to bring it to you tomorrow. How about that? I'm going to add this, doubling back on a story we've spent a little bit of time on. Tom Kane is alive. I don't know whether you want to, cheer that, boo that. I think that was really probably the real-time reaction among the audience. We had a live in-studio audience. Tom Kane is alive. Right, okay. I don't have a crickets thing happening here, but okay. Or Tom Kane is alive.
That's bullshit.
It could be, but it appears to be true. Representative Tom Kane, missing for months, is back home in New Jersey. Not in Congress, but now that he's back home, and next week he'll be in the same place that all of them are, not New Jersey, but home. So you won't notice the difference. It's in the New York Times, so A, it has to be true, and B, it has to be moderate to say so. The congressman, who has been absent from Washington since March, they're actually pretty pointed about this story, answered the door of his home on Wednesday evening. He was wearing a suit and tie. And I don't think that's important to know, except for, I don't know, this is literally as a proof of life story at this point. Tracy Tully does the reporting. I don't know if she's the one that knocked on their door or not, but let's find out. Representative Thomas Kane Jr., who has been missing from Washington for nearly 4 months, with little explanation, is back home in New Jersey. Is Tom Kane Sr. alive? I think he is. Did they ever ask him at any point, what's up with your son? Yeah, I think he's alive. There's no death listed in Wikipedia, so if there's no death listed in Wikipedia, you're alive. Because people race to Wikipedia to put people's death listings in there. Did everybody find it, rude to ask him? Or did they ask him and he said, you're really going to have to ask him, he's a grown man at this point? Because that's a fine answer, too. Anyway, he could be seen from the street on Wednesday evening, standing in a brightly lit front room of his Westfield home just before 8:45 p.m. And I guess he uses the LED bulbs in that house. It's like driving past a vape store closed at night, I guess. Extremely bright lighting. I don't know. Anyway, it's good to see you, he said, after a reporter for the New York Times, not Tracy Tully, maybe? I don't know. But she is a reporter for the New York Times. Anyway, after a reporter for the New York Times rang his doorbell, he was wearing a dark suit and a red tie. I'll talk to you next week, he said. Thank you. Mr. Kane's wife, Rhonda, stood in the background, and I think she was missing too for some time, smiling pleasantly. Like it is a little Twilight Zone-ish, right? He declined additional comment and closed the door. Aides had said that Mr. Kane, 57, was being treated for a health condition and was expected to fully recover, as many of our gun fail victims, and had offered no additional details as their boss missed more than 100 floor votes since the middle of March. Mr. Kaine, a Republican, is running for a third term in November in one of the country's most competitive midterm races. His absence from the campaign trail, though, had left even some of his biggest Republican boosters frustrated. A spokesman for Mr. Kaine, Harrison Neely, said last week that the congressman was expected to return to Washington on June 30th, which he's really not because they're going on recess for 2 weeks, so why you say that? He declined to say how long Mr. Kaine had been home or to offer any additional details about the congressman's long absence. He will be fully transparent on the 30th, and I think they're talking about you'll be able to see through his body on the 30th. That must be what they mean. Mr. Neely wrote in a text message, and let me just check the calendar here. I mean, I guess it's possible that the Senate is going on a 2-week recess and the House isn't, but the 30th is what, next Tuesday, which would ordinarily be the day that most members of Congress would arrive back for a work week, and they could be taking the following week off. But I mean, July 4th is that Saturday. I have my doubts about whether or not the House is coming back at all on June 30th, and therefore Kaine with him, and that'll just make for a more interesting story when he doesn't show up, even if it has nothing to do with his health. Earlier this month, Mr. Kaine, in absentia, locked in the Republican nomination for his 7th district seat. He was running unopposed. Even he wasn't there. Not only was there no opposition, he didn't even show up. Democrats selected Rebecca Bennett, 39, a former Navy helicopter pilot. The Democratic Party considers Mr. Kaine's seat one of its best pickup opportunities as it seeks to tip the balance of power in Washington, and had been aggressively targeting the race long before the congressman began missing votes in Washington. Mr. Kaine was last spotted on Capitol Hill on March 5th. He spoke that day during a committee hearing and cast a crucial yay vote, yay, in support of funding President Trump's immigration crackdown, boo, bad term, and boo, funding it, and moving to end a government shutdown, which at least that's good. Then he seemingly vanished. Neighbors in Westfield said there had been no obvious sign of Mr. Kaine for months, and the family's vacation house in Bay Head, New Jersey. Drove through there a couple of times this past weekend while I was in La Valette, and when we went to Point Pleasant to visit with Bill Barr and family. We went through Bay Head a couple of times. And by the way, that's probably where he would have his vacation house. If you've driven through it, yeah, there's, multi-million-dollar beachfront properties there. But it appeared shuttered the weekend before Memorial Day, which is a whole other topic about all these fabulous beach houses. They always appear shuttered because the people just accumulate the houses and then they don't even go to them. I'm living in my survivalist bunker in Hawaii right now. I got no use for my vacation home, and I'm not going to verbo it to anybody else. I don't want the hoi polloi in my house, so it just stays shuttered. Typical. Anyway, Mr. Kaine's... they also checked another one because he's got another beachfront house elsewhere. Guess what? And it's not even in New Jersey. Year-round residents of Fishers Island, New York, where the Kaine family owns a large estate, and everywhere they own estates they're large, said they had not seen him either. Although I will say in Bay Head, the land holding is probably not as large. They really packed the houses in on the Jersey Shore. Mr. Kaine's aides repeatedly insisted that he had no plans to abandon his re-election effort, and he was expected to return to work, quote, soon, even as they refused to discuss the medical condition that had sidelined him. In May, after a debate between 4 Democrats vying to run against him, Dan Scharfenberger, Mr. Kaine's chief of staff, offered a cryptic explanation for why there had been no sightings of the congressman in Washington or in his New Jersey district. And the answer, you remember, was, there's no cameras where Tom is, he said, and did not elaborate. I hope there's some transparency about that one. During his absence, Mr. Kaine had nonetheless bought and sold stock, introduced remarks into the congressional record, oddly enough, yes, you don't have to be there to do that, and urged House colleagues from afar to oppose Ireland's effort to limit trade with Israel. It's an I country thing. Don't get in the middle of it. A handful of Republican leaders in the 7th District's 6 counties, got it, reported getting calls from the congressman. I'm alive. alive. And his office had released 2 statements attributed to Mr. Cain, including one on primary day, June 2nd, when he made no public appearances. Quote, right now I am focused on my recovery and under the advice of health care professionals, the June 2nd statement said. It will be interesting to find out what they are willing to say about this. The statement indicated he planned to be completely transparent as to the nature of my medical condition. I understand the need for transparency on this matter, he wrote, and I look forward to sharing my experience with the public. I really couldn't guess for you what this thing was. I mean, unless it required rehab of some kind. I mean, the idea of no cameras where he is. I'll be interested to see what kind of explanation they offer for that. Okay. Back to Instapaper. There are broader stories that need coverage, but, I wanted to update you on that one. Here's something quick for before the break, I think. I might be able to squeeze in 1 or 2 of these things. Just to let you know that this is alleged to have happened. Oh, it got deleted. So maybe it's not alleged, or maybe it did happen and now he's really in trouble. But I saw, let's see, it was a post on Blue Sky by Patrick Pineda is his name, but the screen identity is that of, I got to go back and see if I can find it. Storm Chaser? Yeah, Storm Chaser Patrick. And Storm Chaser Patrick was saying, I don't know, maybe now I shouldn't be hesitant to do this, but I'll be called as a witness to see. He said he was making a joke on Blue Sky, and he said something like, well, I confess, I'm the one that put the algae in the reflecting pool, and he had a whole background joke. It was a months in the making. I introduced the algae spores into the paint they used to put on the bottom. It was ridiculous. And he had come on to Blue Sky last night to say, well, oh my God, I got a visit from the FBI at my house over this. I mean, come on. It was an obvious joke. A months-long plot to introduce algae spores into the paint that they were using at the, but I guess over at it's Kash Patel's FBI, he's going to send some people. I guess. Do I believe it? Do I not believe it? Is it? And then people were advising him, maybe you should be shutting up about this. And maybe his lawyer told him you should shut up about this, and he deleted it. Or maybe it was like, now I'm being arrested, and they're making me delete this. I have no idea what's going on. Or maybe it was all made up in the first place. I don't know. But I was going to add that to the coverage of another piece, which I might as well start now since this one is no longer available, that kind of makes you think maybe it could be what they're stupidly wasting their time on there at the FBI. Because from out of Syracuse, New York, we have this story. And when I say it's from out of Syracuse, I mean it's from Syracuse.com, which could be based anywhere. They could be working remotely, but they claim to be from Syracuse. Federal agents track down Syracuse woman, and they would know because they're in Syracuse, demand she remove Instagram post about ICE. If that's happening, the Storm Chaser Patrick thing could be happening too. Are they FBI agents? Let's see if we can find out. Federal agents with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. What and why? Speak with, the photo caption says, Paige Lynn Gonye, I'm guessing, Gonye, over an Instagram post she made in January, by the way, and they're confronting her when? Tuesday, primary day. It's important. Why? June 23rd, 2026. So there you go. What's happening here? Michelle Bradenbach is reporting again for Syracuse.com. I think you got to keep an eye on this one. 2 U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents issued a warning to a Syracuse woman Tuesday to remove a social media account they said threatens federal agents. Paige Lynn Gonye, or Gonye, I don't know, Gonye I'm going to say, said she believes they are referring to a January post. They didn't even make it clear. They're referring to a January post where she named the ICE agent who shot protester Renee Good. Keep in mind, by the way, that that's actually been reported in the media generally already. So, come on. But I guess maybe the ICE agents think that they can threaten an individual's First Amendment speech rights and get away with it, whereas if they try to threaten a media organization's First Amendment rights, they will have resources to fight them. Paige Lynn Gagne says she thinks it's this January post there after, but here's the interesting part. She was working as a poll worker on Tuesday afternoon at the Central Library on Salinas Street when agents called to meet with her. She said she invited them in. It's like talking to a vampire here. The part I was getting up to is we now are, in fact, seeing ICE agents show up at the polls. Hi, it's me, David. I mostly do the commercials around here, too. Have you ever thought you'd like to do a show like this one, but a lot shorter? Maybe without necessarily waking up early each day, or even, let's say, working at it each day? Well, now you can, sort of, and by now, I mean pretty much any time you want, because what I'm talking about is you recording a news story, sharing an essay, or otherwise contributing your thoughts on these crazy times with the rest of us, and with any digital recording device. Make the show your own, as I like to say. Send me a digital file of your recording, a link to any source material, and a note about how you'd like to be identified on the air at KagroX, that's KAGROX, at gmail.com, and I'll take it from there. Don't worry about those ums and ahs either. I sure don't, but I'll even do my best to edit your submission down into a nice-sounding dispatch from the field. So come on, everybody, make the show your own. Help me prove once and for all that I'm not just imagining this audience. All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Almost back on time. So, yeah, this story from out of Syracuse is concerning, although it's beginning to make a little bit more sense. She invited them in. But it's just, yeah, everybody's been worried. They've been talking about this and rumors flying all over the place that they were going to have ICE agents at the polls and they were going to discourage people from voting by just being there. And then we were, on a counter side, saying, well, ICE is pretty disorganized and they don't have enough agents to put them everywhere, but they don't really need to put them everywhere. You can concentrate on places where they would be most effective in scaring the crap out of people, I suppose. But it's also very interesting that in the end, now the invitation for them to enter is also interesting. And she probably should not have done that. But I was looking at it and saying, for the rest of us peons, you're not even allowed to talk about anything political within 100 feet of a polling place. But for, Trump Republicans, they can just walk in armed and arrest their enemies in the middle of a polling place. What's going on here? But apparently, she made the cardinal error with the vampires. She invited them in. She should have said, no, I'm working. Get lost. What the hell are you bothering me here for? But it does worry me a little bit. Bigger picture still, one, this is an exercise in putting ICE agents into polling places, even if they have to, at this point, ask for permission. Maybe later they don't, or maybe later, this time they asked for permission and stupidly they were given the permission, and now it will appear from the headlines like they don't need permission, and then they'll all just assume they don't and just start working that way. Oh, really? Oh, we needed permission? I didn't read the article. Well, okay. Anyway, but it worried me a little bit, the idea that, all right, well, here's an example of ICE agents, in fact, showing up at the polls, and also, along with everything else, as Greg mentioned, using the Postal Service to try to eliminate at least the right of states that aren't providing their voter rolls voluntarily to the Trump administration on the federal level so that they can build their supposed approved voter database, that they were going to direct the Postal Service not to deliver mail-in ballots in those states and try and how are you going to deal with that in a state doesn't Oregon have all mail voting? Does that mean they have no polling places open, or is that just that everybody gets a ballot and you can use it, and if you don't feel like it and you want to show up and vote at the polling place, you can do it? I don't know. I didn't vote when I was in Oregon because I'm not registered there, and it wasn't election day. But I'm a little bit curious about that. But if you limit or try and eliminate mail-in voting, and also work hard to try and eliminate as much, if not all, of the early voting that happens. I mean, Trump's stated position is that it should be all in person and all on one day. And if that's the case, I mean, like, why are they interested in that? They say, well, it helps to eliminate fraud. I think it actually probably makes it more difficult to detect fraud because the election workers are then overwhelmed and really can't spend any time with individual voters making sure that they are in fact who they say they are. They really have to move, they got to move people quickly, as quickly as they can. But also it means that everybody is funneled to identifiable places. Like if you want ICE agents or anybody, any federal agents to show up and harass targeted individuals or just start looking for people to target, now everybody has to go at the same time, on the same day, to the same place, and they can lie in wait for you there the way they have been at federal courthouses and outside of immigration judges' chambers to nab people that they can then deport, right? So this time they'll just wait outside the polling places and grab people that they don't like. Anyway, you should be keeping an eye out for that. So anyway, Paige Lynn Gagne said she was working as a poll worker on Tuesday afternoon at the library. Agents called to meet with her. I mean, she could say, I'll meet you outside. I'll take a break. I'll see you at 7 or 8 p.m. whenever the polls closed in New York that day. But instead, she said she invited them in, and she probably should not have done that. She said she did not want to meet them outside alone, and I can understand that too. And maybe she wanted to bring some accompanying. Okay, now it starts to make more sense. Yeah, I'm not going out there. You're going to grab me and throw me in a van or something. I don't know if she has any immigration issues herself or in her family or just distrusts ICE or federal agents who show up to harass you about things you allegedly posted that are 1, protected speech, 2, quite anodyne, and 3, from January. I did see somebody else making a great point. It's hard to see this as not some sort of dry run or exercise for getting federal agents inside polling places on Election Day, given that this post went up in January and they waited till late June to do anything about it. National security or whatever the hell it is that they claim has their interest in this. They waited 6 months to do it, and apparently they knew exactly who they were going after and where she'd be because they knew enough about her to know that she was an elections worker. It's a little too much to be just coincidence that they decided to make this visit on Election Day. Well, anyway, she said she didn't want to meet them outside alone, and now that makes a little bit more sense. I've seen the news, especially in Minnesota, she said, and I didn't want anything to happen to me at all. And it really would have been a much bigger scene, I suppose, if they had shot her in the polling place as opposed to outside. It would have been a bigger deal. The agents handed Gagne a form letter that says they were investigating threats made against ICE personnel. The form says the agents had identified an Instagram account they believe breaks federal law, but it took them 6 months to decide what to do about it, or maybe 6 months to find it, and just so happened we serve you with notice on Election Day when we know where you will be. They asked her to remove and discontinue the behavior, according to the unsigned document she shared on Instagram. And also, by the way, in I guess probably also on her mind, not just Minnesota, where they shot people they disagreed with, but also in, what was it, Plainview, was it? Down in Texas, where they just sentenced everybody to 50-plus years in prison for being at a protest, basically, down there. The guy who got 100 years, well, he shot someone. That's something, but still 100 years. This notice officially informs you, this thing said, that it is unlawful to threaten to assault, kidnap, and or murder, and it is, a federal official or that federal official's immediate family member with the intent to impede, intimidate, and or interfere with the federal official's duties or retaliate against a federal official due to the performance of their duties, the document said. The document said she could be subject to both federal and state prosecution. The agents had New Jersey phone numbers and license plates, interestingly enough. That's a long drive to Syracuse. She said the agents held a folder with copies of her social media posts and her driver's license. They tried to scare me into signing it while I was working, she said, and that's kind of weird too. Gagne posts frequently about immigration on her social media accounts. In January, she posted the name of Jonathan Ross, citing news reports. She posted the name. I don't know in what context or what, but yeah, these agents said, well, it's illegal to murder federal agents. Yeah, haven't. You can't incite others to murder them either. I haven't. But you posted his name online, and that could lead others to decide to try to target him. Yeah, that's actually you guys and your thing. Once again, every Republican accusation is a confession. This is more projection. That's what happens when you guys put the name out. You go and murder people. But anyway, okay, in January she posted the name of Jonathan Ross, citing news reports. Ross is the ICE agent, I guess he is, who shot protester Renee Good in Minnesota. His name has been widely reported in news stories and other social media posts across the world. I think today is a great day for Jonathan to be indicted, the post said. Oh, indicted, I see. Well, that would impede his work, I suppose. And apparently that's a federal crime. But then go see the judge or grand jury about that. Gagne said she does not consider it doxing to quote a news story and call for an indictment. I didn't dox his personal information, such as address, phone number, she said. Gagne said she does not intend to delete her post. In addition to the Attorney General's office, she said she's contacted Representative John Mannion, Mayor Sharon Owens, and the New York Civil Liberties Union. For ICE to come to me over a social media post just feels very 1984 to me, she said. They definitely should have known better to not go into a polling place, even if I said it was okay. Well, that's true. She's not the last word on whether or not it's okay. Gagne shared the video and the document and posted her story on Instagram shortly after the encounter. During Tuesday's primary election, Commissioner Dustin Czarny got calls and texts that ICE was inside a voting site. He said he rushed to the library in downtown Syracuse. He spoke with the worker and connected her with the staff for the State Board of Elections and the Attorney General's Civil Rights Office. By the way, also part of the discussion about how weird this visit is the opportunity that ICE had here to undermine confidence, public confidence in the elections, right? Like if you're a MAGA voter and you show up there, you could build off of this, but just anybody could say, hey, the woman who just checked us in and made sure that our votes were square and A-OK and we're definitely going to count and all that stuff, and who handled our personal information is right now being investigated and or arrested or who knows what by federal officers. Is this election on the up and up or is it not? Right? That's, I guess, a logical conclusion for people with part of the story to walk away with. They've just seen the person who was supposed to be in charge of the integrity of the election questioned by federal officials. And everybody knows the presumption of regularity tells us that when that happens, where there's smoke, there's fire. Unless, of course, there isn't any fire and the presumption of regularity is out the window. Kevin Ryan, the Republican commissioner, said he talked with his staff about whether this was a hoax. He said he called his contacts at Homeland Security who confirmed they had made the visit. He was looking for to claim that she was hoaxing everybody with this, huh? Well, it's an instinct. Ryan said they told him they called the woman first and she invited them in. Czarny said election law authorizes only specific people to be inside a polling place. Poll workers, elections inspectors, voters eligible to vote in the site, and someone a voter brought to assist them in voting. There's no role for law enforcement officials to be inside a polling place unless they are responding to an emergency of some kind, he said. There is no indication of that here. There were no voters in the polling place. That's good. When ICE agents arrived, Gagne said, David Brody, one of the two agents, now they're all in trouble for saying his name, said he could not answer questions from a reporter. They were too hard, I guess. That wasn't the reason, but I'm just going to assume that was really it. Interesting. Keep an eye on it. One of those things that we like to do, raise a red flag now and again and see whether this develops into something worse. And I remind you, Donald Trump is president. He will have it develop into something worse. All right. let's see. Other stories to bring to your attention. Why do I have I have a Blue Sky post from Midas Touch, which is unusual for me. And, I'm not a huge fan of their approach to things generally, but sometimes, acorns are found. Okay. They were the first ones to talk about the second pass at the War Powers Resolution. And that was the only news I had about it at the time. So let's see what they're saying. The Senate has now voted 50 to 47 to 1 to block the, they're not emphasizing the, but I am because of what we know about it now, block the Iran War Powers Resolution after President Trump personally lobbied Republicans today after the resolution previously passed 50 to 48. But we now understand what actually was happening here. Nonetheless, Donald Trump posts on Truth Social about it. Wow, the Senate just changed its vote on Iran from 50 to 48 against to 50 to 47 for. Rand Paul and Bill Cassidy changed. Thank you to Leader John Thune, Lindsey Graham, Bernie Moreno, and all. This vote puts Iran on notice, President DJT. So, probably rather more purposely misstating what actually went on. Probably Donald Trump is, though he was certain not to have understood any of it. And, in the heat of the moment, Midas Touch didn't really get to the nitty-gritty of it either. But let's see, their thread continues. Maybe they get around to telling what actually happened here. Bill Cassidy flipped from supporting the measure, it was a different measure, to opposing it following a White House briefing, while Senator Rand Paul switched to present. Trump's post following the vote is below above. You tell me what that's supposed to mean. Below above? Below above what? A little bit of both. They couldn't decide which. Or they forgot where Blue Sky puts graphics when they are included. All right, that's the end of it, at least for last night's posting about it. But okay, now we can be done with it because it didn't tell us too much. All right, now that explains why Midas Touch showed up in my Instapaper. Let's see. Oh boy, there's an awful lot of things that are suggested for our consideration. Oh yes, I also saw discussion yesterday between our good procedural online friends, Ringwis, KD by proxy, and others, discussing this idea of what the hell happened to the papers and were they presented to the president with respect to the housing bill that he canceled the signing for. I haven't read it yet because it's rather lengthy, but Ringwis was sharing, says, so there's always a CRS report for something like this on the presentment clause and the obligations and procedures related to it. This is presenting measures to the president for approval, possible delays, an updated report, updated as of November 1st, 2022. And of course, all the rules could certainly have just gone out the window. So this will inform us well in trying to parse out which of the claims that the White House and Mike Johnson are making are probably untrue or impossible, but it doesn't necessarily answer the question of what has happened to the damn papers, and they're just not going to answer that question for the time being. But it's, good. How long is this thing? 10, 12 pages, I guess. Yeah. So too long to read on the air. There's a summary, which is 1 page. But, just generally tells you what you already know about the 10-day limit and when it starts and how the papers have to be handled. It doesn't tell us anything about what actually happened and where did the papers stop, if they stopped at all, or are they just lying outright? And, I don't know whether I could predict which one they're doing, unless I had to bet on Kalshi about it, for instance. And then I'd choose, I might as well go long and, take the long odds on it and say, I think Trump tore them up and ate them and or put them in the toilet, or both, which is possible if you think about it just for a minute. Anyway, moving on from there and just making it recommended reading. What else have I got here? Is this, this was the discussion between Jamie Dupree and David Dayen about the subject, just to return to it briefly and see what the reporters are saying about it. Jamie Dupree let's see, writes the Regular Order newsletter and has covered Congress since the Reagan administration. So he knows a bit about this. And he writes with a little dome light that's supposed to be a siren, but you can't really make a visual representation of a siren. Anyway, before the 10-day clock can start, you know which 10-day clock that is, for Trump on the housing bill, the final enrolled bill must be signed by Speaker Johnson and the Senate President pro tem, that's Grassley. Then the bill goes to the White House. Those steps have not happened yet, or at least Jamie thinks they must not have happened in order for Trump to feel comfortable doing what he did. Republicans have repeatedly held bills back from the White House, even after final House and Senate votes. That's certainly true. For example, H.R. 972 won House approval on February 26th and the Senate approval on March 3rd, but it wasn't sent to the White House for over 2 months. Sent on May 19th, 2026. That's certainly all true and all a possibility. It's just that I'll bet you that on March 4th, they didn't start building the stage or setting up for a signing ceremony. And, of course, that was already underway for this bill. One bill backed by Senator Thune, S-723, was held back for nearly 2 months after final House and Senate votes. The 10-day clock on the housing package cannot start until the bill is given to the White House. That's certainly true. We just don't know whether they didn't give it or did give it and started saying they didn't in order to have a lie to cover for what they would prefer to be the case. Frankly, he says, I think it's a dangerous blind spot in the operations of Congress, and he's right. It is theoretically possible for the House and Senate to pass bills and for the House/Senate leadership to refuse to send those measures to the president for final approval. And it is a big gap, and they just basically thought that the instructions that they shall be sent forthwith would be enough to embarrass people into avoiding lengthy delays. But remember, this can also be a part of the interplay. If, for instance, the House were to fall to Democratic hands, as it should, but the Senate did not, the Senate might be able to jump out of the way of being accused of voting against certain legislation by, let's say if they're facing re-election later on, they may in fact approve such legislation. But they may, and I guess I forget about how the papers run. I think they has to go back to the originating House. But if the Senate were to pass something, for instance, and the House were to concur in that and agree with it and pass it as well, I think the papers then go back to the Senate for the job of enrollment. But then the Senate could say, if they were still in Republican hands, oh, crap, we didn't really think this thing was going to pass. Or we did want it to pass, we just don't want to embarrass the president with it, and we'll just hold it and not send it to him. That's a possibility to look out for if both houses aren't recaptured by Democrats in November. Anyway, it was just interesting. And David Dayen jumps into the conversation at some point, too, saying they were holding a bill signing today. This is the weird part, right? That was abruptly canceled a couple of hours before it was supposed to happen. Were they planning to bring the presentment to the signing? Like, they have to, right? Johnson said on the record that the bill would be signed in 10 days. Why would he say 10 days if he didn't present it? Although maybe he was just saying, I didn't know that the thing was being canceled when I said that. David just goes to the conclusion that Johnson's lying. He did present it. He's just pretending he didn't now under pressure from the White House. And that is entirely possible. And maybe even likely with this set of kooks. I just wanted to, make sure that we definitely said that twice. If you're just joining us, you would have heard it at this point. All right, let's see. Other things to share with you in the closing minutes of the day. Let's see. I'm going to go back to the top and make sure that I did skip a couple of things that I wanted to get other things on the record for you. We'll go here next, I think. Washington Post story. We'll do a little bit of international news because, a lot of this has to do with Iran. Of course, the War Powers Resolution /Act /concurring resolution /concurrent /joint resolution. No one knows what to call anything. And we went over that at some point. But back to Iran itself, rocked, or the surrounding neighbors or regional partners in this whole thing. Rocked by the Iran war, the UAE sours on Trump. We got played. Too bad, and I'm sure everybody feels that way now, except the neighbors already gave $400 million worth of bribe plane to the president. And I think we got to this before the vacation, or the mini vacation over the weekend. But I think on Friday, when we were doing the rerun, they actually had the unveiling for this supposed Air Force One plane. That again, we got it for free. It was a gift. We spent $1 billion fixing it to make it serviceable, quote unquote serviceable. I don't know how good a job did they do on it. Can't tell you. But I guess allegedly that thing is now in service. I haven't seen Trump fly it anywhere, and I don't know whether he's going anywhere this weekend or not. It would be funny if he just took off. Yeah, screw the whole July 4th thing. I'm going to play golf. And see if he takes that plane. And see if it falls out of the sky now that everybody who gave it to him feels like they got played. Anyway, the subheader here, I better get started. Across the Persian Gulf region, the president was viewed as a pro-business ally. Whoops. But his decision to wage war on Iran and his erratic conduct have tarnished his image. To put it mildly, Rachel Chasson, is it Chasson? I don't know. Chason. Don't know how you pronounce it. We'll learn over the course of your career, I'm sure. Headline or dateline is Dubai here. Trump International Golf Club, in this photo, you can see what it looks like, has ornate fountains, striking views, strong branding, and a good collection of hats emblazoned with the words, "Make America Great Again." I don't know if this is the norm there, but everyone is backing into their parking spaces there. Maybe the valet guys are doing it there. Drives me crazy, but if it's valet parking, I can understand it. But there was a notable absence at the property's clubhouse on a recent evening. Fans of President Donald Trump. Well, who else would be there? As they sipped their beers, which you can have there, even though it's Dubai, Dubai residents said Trump's decision to go to war with Iran, and often erratic content over the course of it, had threatened the stability of the United Arab Emirates, a place they had come to do business, and tarnished their view of him. Initial optimism that Trump would be a good ally to this region, built in part on his business-friendly and steady reputation. Oh, I'm sorry, not his, because, like, what? No, it's, that is, the UAE's business-friendly and steady reputation. Not that steady. Had faded for many. On the business side, I thought he was going to do a lot, said Bertie Jones, 23, a little young, who was originally from Britain, by the way, but I've lost all trust in him. But I guess he's originally British and living in UAE, and he has no vote. Publicly, I think, unless there's, fraud. Publicly, officials in the UAE and across the Persian Gulf region largely have avoided criticizing Trump and said the war has only made the UAE double down on its relationship with the United States. When he met Trump last week on the sidelines of the Group of Seven summit in France, UAE President, is that what they're calling him, Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, thanked him for his support and commitment to his allies. Trump, meanwhile, called the Emirati politician a warrior. Is he just a politician, or is he just like king of the UAE? I'm not sure. Anyway, called him a warrior and joked that Mohammed, who is known to be soft-spoken, but how is Trump going to deal with that? He didn't have to strain his voice by talking loudly because he was, quote, that rich. Only Trump could think to even make that note. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio arrived in the capital, Abu Dhabi, this week for the first stop of a tour of Gulf nations and a working lunch with the president. Everything, of course, a lunch for the Trump administration, even where the testes are involved. Speaking to reporters upon arrival on Tuesday evening, Rubio praised the UAE for standing by the United States during the war. I don't know of anyone who's been stronger with the United States over the last 6 months, Rubio said. They've been phenomenal. Analysts, however, said the friendly public posturing belies a deep frustration in the Gulf with Trump's decision-making. Regional officials actively tried to avoid war and counseled the U.S. against launching it. And I guess they just didn't take that advice. Even as administrations changed, there's been a continuation of the strategic direction between U.S. presidents, said Mohammed Baharoun, Director General of Behuth, a Dubai research center. Throw a dime in the street, he added, and you could find a UAE resident whose opinion of Trump had changed during the war. Why would you throw a dime in the street? I guess that's a UAE idiom of some kind. I don't know. Among them was Omar al-Busaidi, 40, a businessman who said he felt optimistic when Trump headed to the Gulf region for the first major overseas trip of his second term, and the first of his first term, too, as Trump announced $2 trillion in investment deals over the course of opulent ceremonies in Saudi Arabia. I'm way behind here. Qatar and the UAE. Busaidi, who had studied in Florida, everything's moving now, studied in Florida, said he was sure Trump would be a good ally. Well, that's the Florida man in you speaking. Then came the war and the more than 2,600 drones and missiles that Iran fired at the UAE in retaliation. Sorry. Across the region, in unprecedented attacks during the first weeks of the war, Iran hit refineries, oil fields, ports, and hotels. Even after Iran and the U.S. signed a memorandum of understanding, there is still much apprehension in the region about the lack of specificity in the deal and whether it will hold. I'm not going to lie, I had high hopes, Busaidi said of Trump sitting in a coffee shop in Dubai on a recent evening, but we got played. There's more to it. There's lots more to it, in fact, and perhaps we'll return to the subject. I'm sure we'll be talking about it more in the days to come. I did want to highlight something that I saw in the last minutes before the show. The next scandal. I wonder if this has all right. While in Kuwait, Marco Rubio apparently had someone sitting in with him. Trump's son-in-law, Michael Boulos, who I think is married to Tiffany, right, was in the official meetings in Kuwait. Why? Answer? Well, he was just here because his brother lives here, apparently. And I'm a good friend of Michael's, so we had a chance to catch up at work in my meeting with the Kuwaiti officials.
From networksradio.com.
If there were still such a thing as scandal, I'd say this was the next one in development.
Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
All right, time now to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Top of the list here, a MAGA DOJ nominee was caught by the Senate deleting over 300 offensive social media posts, if they care about those things. And let's see, what else? Trump's DHS accused of retaliating against ICE observers by stripping away their domestic and international travel rights. I know we've gone well past the music, but we'll see you tomorrow. Stay tuned.